You're listening to an audio resource from Redemption Hill Church. This resource is not meant to be a replacement for participation at a local church, but an accessory to the care you're receiving from your own pastors. To learn more about Redemption Hill Church or to give to our ministry, visit redemptionhilldsm.org.
Once again, we're talking about Mormons. Seems kind of weird, but here we are. You're listening to Cornfield Theology. Hey everyone, Pastor Sean here once again at you with another Cornfield Theology podcast. Thanks for listening to Cornfield Theology. We truly want to be a blessing to you. We want to challenge how you think. We want to inform you about God's Word and talk well about theology. Cornfield Theology is a ministry of Redemption Hill Church. We are located in where, Logan?
The Des Moines Metro,
baby. That's right. And in case you don't know Des Moines, it's in Iowa. I mean, not everyone's heard of Des Moines, I guess.
Yeah, flyover country.
Flyover country. I don't mind being flyover country, man. It's like I was bugged by it for a while. Then I'm like, you're
missing out.
Iowa's great. Let's keep Iowa weird, man. Let's just keep flying over. Cool. We like our thing here.
We'll do our own thing.
Yeah, we got it. And so anyways, Redemption Hill Church, we meet at 10 a.m. at Radiant Elementary. So if you want to check us out and you're local, stop on by. You can catch out all the Cornfield Theology podcasts and blogs and resource pages at cornfieldtheology.com. Also check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, and all the relevant outlets. Also be sure to check us out on social media, right, Logan?
Yeah.
You're a big social media guy.
No.
Yeah, you are.
Listen to our last podcast.
Oh, yeah, you weren't.
No.
But
you can check us on Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook.
Twitter. Instagram.
You go to look for Redemption Hill.
Are we on MySpace?
Oh, the blast from the past. We are not on TikTok. I can tell you what we're not on. TikTok. I don't even know how that would even work, but I don't even want to know. I'm not even going to explore that. Anyways, you can find us a little bit.
Pretty simple.
What's that?
Nothing.
You're on TikTok, or you confirm or deny that?
I got on it, and then I was like, China's stealing a lot of my information, so then I got off of it.
Yeah. Anyways, if you don't want to get on social media, good news for you. Like I said, cornfieldtheology.com. You can check us out there. And if you want to sign up for our email list, if you go to the website, go to the bottom of the page, you can put your email in. You don't get spammed. Every time a blog drops, it just emails it to your inbox.
There you go.
So pretty easy. All right, we're talking about Mormonism again, guys. If you are catching this particular podcast and you're like, what are you talking about? Guess what? We have a theological primer on comparing theological doctrine of Mormonism and Orthodox historic Christianity. And we kind of talk through some of the main theological distinctions, namely the Trinity, the deity of Christ. A big one we talked about, guys, was grace, right?
Yep.
Works righteous salvation versus a grace salvation. That's very distinctive. And so we try to hash out those differences and why they're important. And Logan and I, about a month ago, as we said in the last podcast, had coffee. Well, I guess they didn't have coffee. I had coffee.
Yeah.
And it was good.
Man, we were so mean. We invited them to a coffee shop.
I thought about that when I did, and I'm like, but I'm sure they're used to it by now.
They got hot chocolate.
They get hot chocolate. So anyways, we chatted with them. It was a wonderful conversation. Nice dudes. Really appreciated their time. I've been thinking about catching up with them again and be like, hey, you want to grab, I guess, hot chocolate? Again, or whatever.
Would you like some tea?
They do like Mountain Dew.
They do like Mountain Dew, yeah. So we talk about the theological distinctions and the differences. Differences is probably the right word there. And now we want to talk about kind of two other lanes. One, your theology always has consequences for how you live and how you feel and what you believe. That's true of any faith, right?
Oh, yeah.
If we're just being honest.
Yeah, because it becomes your worldview.
Totally, exactly. It's how you operate your life. And I think what we tried to show last time, what we really want to show now, is that in light of what they believe, specifically about grace, is that there's a particular kind of culture, and what they believe about heaven and things like that. There's a particular culture within Mormonism that's hard to leave. So we're going to kind of get into that a little bit. And also, for those of you who are like, if you're like, how do I talk to Mormons? We just want to give some tips. Rob and I, Rob Dannison, who's here, along with Logan Kane, sorry I didn't introduce you guys. We were talking about that. There are some specific ways that we can help coach people in terms of, okay, here's some good news. You actually can talk to Mormons. Here's some tips. So I didn't tell this story the first time. So there I was.
Yeah.
I was 18,
Mm-hmm.
and I met a girl.
Ooh.
Yeah, I went to this camp. I was in Bloomington, Indiana, University of Indiana, right? And we're at the camp. I was the only one from like the state of Iowa or my region that went. I don't know what it was exactly, but I wanted to be a teacher,
Okay.
education teacher.
What kind of teacher?
I wanted to do elementary ed, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So they had this camp where it's like, if you wanted to be a teacher, we can kind of give you some training about. So when you get into college, you kind of know what you're doing and you know what to expect, things like that.
Sure.
That was cool. And then there was this gal. I'll leave her nameless. Not that anyone's gonna be listening to this. And all of a sudden, I'm like,
Hey, people listen.
not yeah, a few. Anyways, she was really nice. She was pretty, and she was Mormon. And then all of a sudden, we started hanging out during this camp and all that kind of stuff. And I'm getting to know her. It's like a week-long camp. And if you ever been to a camp, it's like you're all in the same place at the same time, so you get to know people pretty quickly. Well, all of a sudden, we agreed to stay in contact, and we did stay in contact. We were on the phone all the time. And then she was from Utah, from southern Utah, and I actually went out to visit her in Utah. Well, I should back up. Before I did that, when I came home, I started meeting with the Mormon elders in Dubuque, Iowa, and started going to church with them.
Sure.
So doing their I don't know what they call it, catechism, whatever's before church, whatever they got going on, going to their church or whatever. And I started learning a lot about Mormonism. And here's what I'm going to admit. The appeal was to the girl. First,
Yeah.
I get that. But the appeal, what I saw in her is what I saw in a lot of other Mormons, a genuine love for their faith. I mean, I got to admit, like, I have my beef with Mormonism. We're going to get into it here in a moment. But what I saw in her, I'm like, wow, that's not how I grew up. I grew up Roman Catholic. And I'm not saying Roman Catholics don't have a genuine love for their faith. That's not what I'm saying. But for me, from my seats, she was one of the first people I met where I'm like, whoa, you actually practice what you preach. You practice what you believe. And I found that quality really attractive. So I don't know if they call that Mormon missionary dating or if there's a language for it.
You were almost snatched away.
Yeah.
Well, if I may say,
Yeah, go for it, Matt.
It's interesting in talking with some Mormons that have thought about leaving.
Mm-hmm.
That's one concern they have, is that they've had such a strong community.
Yeah.
And in church involvement, and
Mm-hmm.
are they going to experience that outside?
Right.
But because they're so sheltered in a sense, they don't know hey, there are
Yeah.
other strong Christian communities out there.
Yeah, totally. And what I saw, to your point, Rob, what I saw with her is like she was in a strong community. It's clear that was very much the case.
Well, you saw that she was pretty and that she was in a strong
All right,
community.
fair point. Point of order. Point of order.
There was priority number uno. Those other things.
Yeah. So I actually go out to southern Utah. I visit her. I visit her family. I do that whole thing, which is crazy. Yeah. Even saying it out loud.
Were you 18 or were you 19?
I was like 18 or 19, somewhere in there.
Okay.
And I come home, and then, and all of a sudden I start moving toward like baptism in the Mormon church. And I'm like, okay, we're doing this. All right, she's pretty. I can get baptized and, continue to grow in this Mormon faith thing. And then, maybe someday. And then I will never forget the night before I was to get baptized, I walk out on the deck and my mom was sitting there. It must have been a nice summer day or something. And I told her, I'm like, and she knew I've been going to this Mormon church and she had met the elders. And I said to my mom, hey, I'm going to get baptized tomorrow. And my parents were pretty like independent. At this point, they're like, hey, you do you.
Sure.
But she did say this. She's like, hey, just wait one more week. Just one more week. Think about it. And then if after that week you want to get baptized, we'll let you do it. I'm like, all right, cool. I love my mom so much. And so loved her then, loved her to this day. I wanted to honor her wish. And so I did. So I'm like, hey guys, I got to put it off a week. My mom just asked me to think about it. And I think that's fair. And I want to honor her. Well, within that week, that span, that one Saturday, I met another girl.
Gosh, dang it.
So bad, so shallow.
I'm just learning a lot about you right now.
But she was a Christian, and she wasn't falling for my dumb little tricks. But she was a Christian, and she said, hey, come to church, and I heard about the gospel for the first time. So I never got into a relationship with her, but I'm grateful for her because what I saw in the Mormon gal, I saw in her a genuine love for her faith. And if you're from Dubuque, Iowa, by the way, like it's all Catholic. And so you don't hear about the grace of the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
And that's shifted in the last 20, 25 years. But at that time when I was growing up, never heard about this thing called grace. As we talked about earlier with Mormonism, kind of a works righteous salvation, So anyways, that's the story, guys.
I'm getting the big takeaway that girls can lead men by the nose to the gospel, and maybe that should be leveraged. Is that not what I'm supposed to be taking?
No,
from
I don't think so. But I think the one takeaway, though, I do appreciate the genuineness of their faith. We said in the last podcast these very clear differences, and I think it's fair point for being intellectually honest. It's good to point those out. Mormons are good people in terms of hardworking. We point out their work ethic. They're kind. I've never met a mean Mormon. Have you?
No.
I really haven't. But we do think that Mormons are living not in truth. And some of them who want to leave can't because of a theological system that makes it very hard for them to leave because of the repercussions of leaving.
Although I do, while there is definitely the social stigma, the family, the community, supposedly there has been a change in the church where you can leave without actually getting formally excommunicated now.
Oh.
I guess there was a change recently.
Another way forward.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So you can leave a little more quietly, and they'll just remove your name from some list.
So let me ask you this question, Rob. Let's say I'm a Mormon, got a wife, she's Mormon, kids that are Mormon, and I wake up one day and I'm like, honey, I don't think I'm Mormon. What then are the repercussions in many situations that we've heard?
I mean, there's two roads that happen.
Mm-hmm.
If that person doesn't believe in their Mormonism anymore, and they haven't filled it with something else, they're on a track to not believing in any God or any particular religion. Or if they, let's say, heard the gospel, read the Bible, and it just empowered them, then it might lead them down that path. Right. So that's the two avenues they would go. But in either case, if the wife doesn't go along with him, if it's a guy that's leaving and he's married, that wife is now looking at it. And I don't want to say this in a rude way, but that's her meal ticket to get to the celestial kingdom.
Yeah, right. The third in the last podcast,
yeah, she has no other course.
That's like the top level heaven, just to reference that, because we're podcasting these back to back. But in
the previous podcast,
explain that real quick, just 10 seconds.
Okay, celestial kingdom, lowest; terrestrial kingdom, mid tier, and we're talking about heavens, layers of heavens. Celestial kingdom, greatest heaven there is. Mormons go there who follow specific commands and like faith, repentance, baptism, believes laying on hands. One of them we actually forgot to mention last time was marriage.
Oh yeah.
No, you did
marriage
mention. You did
in the
have
temple.
to get married in the temple.
Yeah.
But
Rob did
now
mention that.
Part of the role of the woman though in this marriage is to have kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if now the husband is no longer Mormon, she cannot fulfill that role that helps her get into the celestial kingdom.
Yeah, if there's no marriage, then she can't get to that. And that's the interesting part is the whole idea of getting to that celestial kingdom is so that they can become a god of their own planet and have their own spirit babies.
Right.
And and they're very much in wanting to keep the family together.
Right.
Very big on family.
Right.
And so if the wife doesn't leave Mormonism and the husband does because he's either fallen into agnosticism or an atheist or some other religion, she has to get divorced. Yeah, she has to leave him.
And there's pressure from the community to
and then get remarried to a different Mormon.
So can we just pause and say, like, that is the culture of fear that I've been talking about, is that if this isn't done right, then oh my goodness, my chances of reaching the celestial heaven are gone.
Right.
So I'm going to do everything I can to keep it together, so that is still a reality for me someday.
Not only gone, but it's the breaking up of their family.
Right.
Yeah.
Their kids and her, and there's no guarantees.
And this is a very graceless system of theology. And I'm not trying to be, I don't know, dismissive. I'm an expert on Mormonism per se, but the stories I hear from many people who've left the faith, that is such a big struggle.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, if I don't do this, then this will not happen.
Yeah. Would you say with your conversations with Mormons that the implications of leaving the faith with their family is probably the biggest hurdle for them?
Yeah, I think so. And I think is what I would commend Mormons for, is like a high view of the family,
mm-hmm.
like a strong family unit. So I like, in that perspective, I'm like, that's awesome. I can commend you for some of that.
That they believe that children are good.
Yeah, exactly.
And good to have children.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
some things sometimes their culture does not promote.
Correct. And so, not to get into, this is not I don't say this political way, but there's a theological conservatism with them.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'm looking at Genesis 1 and I'm like, multiply. Okay, we're going to multiply. I can appreciate their view of the family and the strength of their theology, even though I don't agree with some of the theological distinctives that underpin the family necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get that, and I appreciate that. However, what is good is will also become a place of, I don't know, putting into fear.
Mm-hmm.
If this thing that we value,
it's a tool
so much,
to keep you in line.
Yeah, if this thing, man, now you sound like 1984. I'm not trying to go there and Orwellian on it. Good night, man.
Come on, man.
Come on, man. So it's like, if this thing is not held together, then oh my goodness, the repercussions and the implications are tough.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the other thing is, if you're a Mormon and you're starting to have questions for whatever reason, whether it be the Bible or
Right.
Doctrines that may be contradictory, that you're seeing, and it's causing you to question. Another fear tactic, in a sense, you could say, is the feedback they get from other Mormons, not necessarily in their family, that that means you're going to go and you're going to become an alcoholic. You're going to become,
you go off the rails. Or
yeah, going off the rails.
You're
exactly.
just going with the world. Look at the world and whatever else have you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we talked about this earlier, where what I desire for us is that as Christians, we want to provide a place that Mormons who leave the faith can come and explore Christianity. A place where there's an abundance amount of patience and grace, to be like, okay, what is this thing you call Christianity? What is grace? What is the grace of the gospel? What does that mean?
Yeah.
Because we talked offline a little bit, Rob, is that some people who leave the faith, they just become atheists or agnostics or whatever. It's like they leave any vestiges of religion behind. Like, I don't want anything to do with that. And my plea is, no, don't do that. I understand the instinct when one leaves their faith. I understand that instinct. But actually come to what is true and right and what is good. Come to Redemption Hill Church. We love to have you. But you come to a place like this, it's like you'll be in the presence of people who love God deeply, but who've been saved by grace alone, and who try to live in such a way, in a manner of speaking, by the grace of God.
Yeah.
So, any other things that kind of keep Mormonism together that is daunting or scary?
I mean, I feel like when you're talking about fear or the use of fear, and maybe this isn't a thing for most Mormons, but it's something like, if I was a Mormon, I couldn't forget about. We talked previously about who goes to the outer darkness, their version of hell.
This is a good point. This is a great point.
Satan, the demons, and apostate Mormons.
Yes.
Like that. Wow.
That's crazy.
Like,
so let's just paint this really clear. If I'm a Mormon,
yep.
And again, I'm married. I got like 80 kids, and not polygamy, because they put away with polygamy in the 70s, I think. but I got a lot of kids, and I leave the Mormon faith, and my wife divorces me, and all of a sudden we're not together. I'm going to outer darkness.
Yeah.
With like the devil.
Yeah, and demons and the rest of the apostate Mormons.
So,
like,
if that is my theology, think about what that does psychologically to a person.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it becomes a lot like what's that? Pascal's Wager.
Yeah.
Which is not the best apologetic thing, but it's the idea of like,
No, but it applies here.
You either believe and you get to go to heaven, which is good, or you believe and you don't get to go to heaven and it's just a neutral wash.
So why not just believe?
Or you don't believe and then you go to hell and then that's negative.
Yeah.
Or you don't believe and there's nothing, which is just a wash. So it's better to just believe because there's the possibility of heaven.
Right.
Like if you're stuck in Mormonism, it's like, well, if I stay, I have that possibility of heaven. But if I leave and I'm wrong for leaving, like I am going to hell. Versus everyone else, like me not being a Mormon, I get to go to a heaven at least.
Right. Yeah. You see how that just traps people. And again, like I said a moment ago, what that does to people psychologically is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And it's fair to say that within Protestantism, there are certain sects, I guess, that have that same culture of fear, same psychological effect on people. Again, different system, but same effect.
Yeah.
Of basically, it's when I say fundamentalism, I mean not the fundamentals of the faith, but those movements that do exist that have those same cultures of fear
That are really focused on law and like you must do these things.
Right. Right. Yeah. So totally.
I haven't interacted with a bunch of fundamentalists. Sorry.
No. Yeah. Wow.
My train was going and then it pumped the brakes. And
here's another thing about in terms of like a concern I have with Mormonism in general is that there's an obsession with Joseph Smith. Like he is their savior. I mean,
he's the prophet.
He's their prophet, but it's over against Jesus Christ, and I find that extremely troubling. Obviously, I feel it's troubling as a Christian, right? But it's almost like I akin it to some people within the Catholic Church who are like obsessed with the Mother Mary, and that becomes their god essentially,
an idol.
But
yeah, I mean, if you think about this, like in the Book of Mormon, I think Jesus is mentioned like once.
Yeah,
once.
Yeah, it's like these are our religious texts about what we believe. Oh, there's this guy named Jesus. Have you heard of him?
He's in the New Testament, which is only accurate as far as it's translated.
Right. Yeah. Again, previous podcast.
Well, and actually, I'm in the process of looking it up, but Joseph Smith also took credit for actually doing more to keep the church together or bringing the church back than Jesus.
Okay. So
he's kind of touting himself.
He's messianic.
Yeah. And that, so, I mean, that's huge right there if that's his claim.
Yeah. And again, Joseph Smith, sketchy past. I know good Mormons don't want to hear that, but if you want to be intellectually honest, go study the history. This is not about like, oh, you just don't like Mormonism. No, it's not. I promise you, it's not like it's a hit job and I'm just trying to say false things.
Well, they have the gospel topic essays.
Yeah.
That's in their the book of the Mormon Church has acknowledged it.
Yeah.
And it talks about the past of a lot of different things.
So even if we did a quick comparison of Joseph Smith, what we have in terms of documents that talk about his life and Jesus, just think about it from a historical document perspective, like the two aren't even close.
Right.
In terms of their character, their message, what they preached, their mission.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not even close. And so this obsession with Joseph Smith just, doesn't drive me nuts. I'm not a Mormon, but it's just like, I would love to correct that. Like, no, I just want to turn your eyes to Jesus. Read the Gospels over and over and over and over again. A way to push yourself out of these false ideas is to focus on Christ and learn about Christ, learn about his sayings. Mm-hmm. What did he say in the Sermon on the Mount? Why is that so important? Mm-hmm. So, any other thoughts about just kind of Mormon culture, is the way that we, at least and how we've interacted with it over the years, because we've met Mormons before.
Yeah. This is going to almost segue into like what we're next going to talk about, but it is still part of Mormon culture.
Yeah.
And I just want to mention it because you mentioned like going to read the Gospels. when you go read the Gospels, don't read it through your Mormon lens.
Yeah.
I heard this in one of the videos you sent, Rob, but like coming to the Gospels like a child. Like this is the first time
Like you're reading it for the first time.
Yeah, like you're reading it for the first time, and look at what it says, and you will find throughout the New Testament that it contradicts the Mormon theology, the Mormon doctrines, and that just like reading John,
Gospel of John,
Galatians, Ephesians,
and Galatians because of grace.
Grace.
I mean, Paul's addressing
Ephesians because of
works,
grace.
Yeah.
Romans, just talking about like our sin and our depravity and our
Yeah.
But if you come at it with your Mormon lens, you're gonna end up reading things into the text that are not actually there. So you need to come like a child.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I recently wrote a blog on like principles for reading the Bible for Christians, right? Or anyone, but Christians in particular. And one of the things I say is like when you come to the text, even us, we have to like suspend our biases.
Yeah.
Like we don't want to read into the text our presuppositions.
Right.
We want God's word to speak to us. So we want to do our level best to suspend those and hear what God is saying, not what Sean Powers is saying.
Right.
Same thing if you're a Mormon. My encouragement to you, if you're listening, is go to, let's just say the Gospel of John. I think it's a great place. Do your best, just like we would do our best to suspend your Mormon doctrine and just hear your Mormon presuppositions and just hear what God says through his word. And I think if you do that, you will be blown away. Because I believe in the power of God's word and what that can do to transform hearts and minds. You'll just be absolutely blown away.
Well, and that's the word gospel. I think there's a difference in what we mean by gospel and what they mean by gospel.
Right. Sure.
And how they come to know that the Book of Mormon is true. Did the Mormon missionaries that you talked to
burning in the bosom?
Right.
That's what they talk about.
They pray.
They pray about the Mormon Bible or Mormon Book of Mormon. Jeez. And I believe they talk about like basically receiving a conviction or what they call a burning in the bosom that what they read is true.
Right.
Yep. There's in the DNC 9:8-9.
Doctrine and Covenants.
Yep. It says, "But behold, I say unto you that you must study it out in your mind. Then you must ask me if it be right. And if it is right, I will cause that your bosom shall burn within you. Therefore you shall feel that it is right." And so they do that. They read the Book of Mormon, and then they pray, and they get some sense of feeling. And that's their acknowledgement that it is right. It's on a feeling only.
Hooked on a feeling. Dun, 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 dun. Sorry.
Again, wow, 2 podcasts in a row, and you started singing. And I do it with you. I'm an accomplice.
You guys are in sync.
Yeah. I think that's a good point.
That's a band.
Yes.
I got
In sync. So I think you raise a good point in that. Well, it goes to this: like, should we base what we believe on feelings?
Yeah. What does the Bible say we should do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, God gave us emotions and feelings. I acknowledge that, but we should not be carried away by our feelings.
Yeah. In Jeremiah 17:9, it says, "The heart is deceitful above all things, and desperately sick. Who can understand it?"
It's the reason why we read in Proverbs, like we have to guard our heart, right?
Yeah.
So we want to your point, I think we encourage Mormons or former Mormons to come to the New Testament. What is God saying? Be ready to engage. Yes, I think it's good to be impacted emotionally. We want to think well. Romans 12:1 too. Like, be transformed by the renewal of your mind.
Right.
And so think well about what it is you read in the Book of Mormon. Then you get to the Gospel of John. You're like, whoa, this isn't map on. This isn't square.
So do you pray about it for the feeling, or do you do what the
pray,
Bereans?
Yeah, you pray to understand. You pray to understand. And that, when I say understand, I'm not getting Gnostic on the whole thing. I'm really like, God has revealed truth through his word, and it is understandable, it is clear, and we pray to understand.
Yeah, and that's what happened when it was Paul talking to the Bereans and bringing the gospel message. They're like, well, we have to go back and study this and make sure that what you're saying is correct.
Yeah, and it wasn't just like studying exactly what Paul was saying.
Sure.
They were comparing it to the Old Testament, the scriptures that they already had. And they're like, oh.
And if your discovery of the truth causes you to sing and shout and wave flags and that gets emotionally, great. That's awesome. But we are led by the truth. Truth is, a knowledge. And then from that, we rejoice and we sing theologically deep songs. We try to sing theologically deep songs at Redemption Hill Church because we want our mind to impact our heart. So I think it's just really important. We kind of have that same approach when we come to Scripture.
Yeah. So it's knowledge of the truth accompanied by emotions, not just emotions.
Yeah. So we're not emotionless beings.
No,
not at all. We're just saying we got to rightly align our emotions with what is true.
Right.
And so, Mormons, please read and
I would say, like you said, John, the whole Gospel of John is awesome.
Yeah.
And then if they want to get in, I don't know if we want to get into some of the other
let's get
books
to it right
of the
now.
Bible, but there's Romans.
So let's say I'm a Mormon. I'm like, I just left Rob Danielson. I'm knocking on your door. I'm like, hey, we've been neighbors for a while. What should I start reading?
Yeah, I would start out with John, the whole book.
Yep.
And then because there's that difference in grace, read Romans 3-6.
Mm-hmm.
And try and fully read it as, like you mentioned earlier, read it as if you were a child. And just let it come out to you what it's saying. Don't try and read into it with your Mormon point of view. Read it from like that of a child.
Now, I would also say Galatians.
Yep.
In light of what we've talked about regarding works, and Paul addresses that head on. That's why he writes the book of Galatians, right? So that'd be another place to go.
Well, in Galatians, not wanting to hammer it on them, but Galatians talks about, Paul says, hey, if someone comes to you with a different gospel, anathema.
Yeah, he's really strong.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, which is really funny. It's interesting that Paul's like, if someone comes with a different gospel, is anathema. 1830 Joseph Smith. I was like, that's a different gospel.
Yeah, and that's the wrestle that Mormons need to deal with. And truly, but it's not, if it's just going to be depending on that burning of the bosom, the feeling that they get, that they prayed, saying that the Book of Mormon's true, if that's all they're going to rely on.
I mean, shoot, have you ever had a strong feeling that turned out to be wrong?
All the time.
Yeah, like
it's called
every time you felt the Cubs were going to win the World Series, you were wrong for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so let's do an analogy here, an example.
I love analogies.
If someone, a guy and a girl were dating, and they came to you, or even to a Mormon, and said, we've been dating for a while. We really love each other. And you know what? We prayed. We both prayed. And we had this feeling that it was right. And we're going to sleep together. We're going to have sex before we get married. Because we feel that it's right. What would you say in response?
Don't trust your feelings. Your feelings aren't accurate.
Yeah. I mean,
your feelings don't.
You bring them to the scriptures. You show them that is wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, the scriptures. And so that's the same concept that Mormons need to take with questioning the different gospels, is going to the scriptures to see what the scriptures say versus just a feeling.
Yeah.
Because like I said earlier, that in Jeremiah, your feelings, they're deceitful. And
your heart's deceitful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good, guys. So don't be hooked on a feeling. I'm thinking to myself,
there's going to be a class action lawsuit against you for the damages you've caused to people's hearings.
Here's, if you're listening.
That came off strong. I'm sorry.
You're fine. It's late. We can make excuses now. It's late.
Yeah, I'm tired.
If Mormons were to come to me and say, hey, what would it be like to come to your church? I'd be like, here's what it'd be like. You walk in, you're going to meet a community of people, small church. We planted a couple years ago. But you're going to meet a community of people who are going to love you and care for you. And then if you have questions, they will graciously respond to you.
Mm-hmm.
They will probably invite you over for dinner. If you have kids with you, they'll let your kids play with them. And then if they interact with me, I'll have them over. I'll take them to dinner. I'll take them to lunch, whatever. And we'll talk about life. We'll talk about life.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually we're going to talk about the grace of the gospel.
With no judgment, no pressure.
No.
And there will be one really friendly intern
Yeah.
that will forget your name.
Overly friendly.
Hey.
Don't be overly friendly. Just kidding.
Don't be overly friendly. Just kidding. Don't do hugs when you're greeting people, Logan.
Yeah. No bear hugs. And so I like to think that our church is a place where anyone could come to learn about who God is and what it means to be in relationship with God. And like, as we've been kind of hammering at over and over, guys, and I think rightfully so, the grace that exists from God.
Right.
Freely given by God.
Yeah. And so, I mean, obviously at our church, you're going to hear, if you're a Mormon, you're coming, and it's going to be different. And it's, you go to something your whole life, and all of a sudden you go to something else. You can be like, whoa, this made no sense. Like
Small culture shock.
Yeah. Well, I grew up Catholic, and then all of a sudden I go to this church, and they're singing like worship music, and someone's preaching for 40 minutes. I'm like, whoa, the homily was only supposed to be 10 minutes. You've gone way over. So, I mean, there's differences, but we try to point you to Jesus over and over again.
You know, I'm just going to throw this out there.
Yeah.
I personally have not been to a Mormon church.
Yeah.
But some of the things that I've heard is that they don't talk about Jesus in the church.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I'll tell you what. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I got.
No, you go ahead.
No, here's the story. I was talking with someone who
So
left
gracious.
the Mormon. Yeah.
No, you. Yeah.
Who left the Mormon church, and that was one of the points that he had made. He's like, I hardly remember talking about Jesus, and so,
and that's the whole basis of the church,
yes,
right?
Absolutely, the Son of God. And so, like a redemptional church, like I think on our website, it's like you go to redemptionhilldsm.org. It's like right there. It's all about Jesus.
It's on my coffee mug.
Yeah, man. So,
well, and you know, another thing that I've heard is even not going to church or going to church and not hearing about Jesus. If you ask them, you know, have you read the Bible?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, you know, I've read a couple of chapters here and there. But then you ask them about the Book of Mormon or their Doctrine and Covenants and Pearl of Great Price, they've read those probably multiple times.
Right. Well, that's at the end of the day, that's the stuff of their theology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, as we talked in our last podcast, you know, the Mormons believe they're the restoration of the true church. And so you got to have the Bible if you're going to say that. But how do you build out Mormon theology, Mormon doctrine? You need those other sacred texts, they would say, to build that out. So you're going to have to focus in on that because I do believe the Word of God is powerful.
Yeah.
And so they got to combat that. All right. That's good, guys. It's really helpful. Anything else to last topic of conversation, and then we'll be done. Let's say we have folks listening, and they're not Mormon. Let's say they're Christians.
Yep.
And like, when someone knocks on the door, like, or my coworker starts talking to me, how do I begin to interact?
I would say ask questions.
Yeah.
You don't need to know everything about Mormonism to have a conversation.
Don't be intimidated then.
Yeah, just seek to know more.
Yeah.
You know, the one downside about people who know a lot about the Mormon Church is that they will, you know, make statements, you know, about the church to the people they're talking to, which may not necessarily be what they believe.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea would be to find out what they believe.
So let's get specific here, Rob, because I think your impulse there is right. What are give 3 questions that our listeners could ask a Mormon just to begin to learn?
Well, I mean, you could start, you know, just by having them tell them what they believe.
Yeah.
You know, or ask them what they
like
what
a simple
they believe.
question like, hey, what do you believe about God?
Yeah. What do you believe about Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
What do you believe about grace?
Yeah, I think that's that one right there. What do you believe about grace? I think asking questions like, so again, I think,
And they want to answer, by the way. Like, they're there to answer those questions.
Yeah, totally. They're trained, so they especially the more missionaries, they got answers for all this. But I think something I want to get back to, because you're right, ask questions. Logan is always right when he says this: have them define the terms.
Yeah.
What
So
do you mean by grace?
That's the follow-up question. What do you mean by that?
Correct. And so asking good questions. Don't be intimidated. I think you can have a curious mind and ask really sharp questions, helpful questions.
And I think after a while, like when you're really listening to them, you're going to notice, hey, that doesn't quite match up. Like when you start going into grace and the nature of grace, like you can start asking those types of questions. Be like, okay, you're saying, saved by grace, but now you're telling, that doesn't match up with us having to do so much works.
Yeah.
So then you can ask them, what's your supporting evidence for that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And have them back up their assertions of what they're believing.
Yeah, I think the other thing,
And point them to the Bible too.
Well,
They'll probably look out the Book of Mormon.
And don't be intimidated by not knowing biblical languages.
Mm-hmm.
If they start saying, well, the Greek says this, be like, I've talked, my pastor's mentioned that before.
Mm-hmm.
And not the brightest bulb in the shed. No, in the
Not the sharpest knife in the crayon box.
See, I'm making my point here. I don't even know idioms very well, but he knows Greek.
Yeah.
And he's helped me understand that that's actually not what that means in the Greek. And I think you have a problem with understanding the Greek. You can say it in a gracious way, right? So don't let that intimidate you. If you've gone to a church that loves to preach the Bible, hopefully you've been taught well about these fundamental things about the Christian faith.
I just want to add on top of that,
Yeah.
like, you can trust your English translations.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Like, I mean, you write out the text you're going to preach on in Greek and then translate yourself.
Yes, I do. Yep.
It's practically the same as what our English translations are.
I do that. It's funny. I do that before every sermon.
Yep.
And what I realize, there are nuances,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not theologically shifting nuances.
No.
It's a good practice to keep you present in knowing biblical languages. But what I find, to your point, more and more is like my ESV is well suited.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of really smart people who are much brighter than me
Yeah.
who translated that.
Yeah, it's like these English translations we have, a lot of them were from a committee of people that knew Greek.
Right.
Like, they're pretty solid.
Yeah, totally. So I think that's a good point. NIV, I think, is going to be okay. Not my favorite. ESV is fine.
And I think they
CSB,
refer to the King James
They
version.
refer to the King James, yeah. I remember when I was given my first Bible, non-Catholic Bible, was a King James from the Mormons. It said the Church of Jesus Christ and Latter-day Saints, a black KJV Bible. I couldn't understand it because it was in the King's language.
Right.
I think you mean the Lord's language.
Yeah. All the vows and whatever.
Hey, if the KJV was good enough for Paul, it's good enough for me.
Oh, stop it, you.
That's funny.
So don't be afraid.
Ask questions.
Ask questions. Ask follow-up questions. Get clarity.
Yep.
Define terms.
And I would say, don't start preaching if they're not asking questions.
Yeah, that's good.
Because if you want to close off the conversation real quick, just go into your speech and preach to them. And
Joseph Smith was a false prophet who,
or bring up contradictory or controversial topics for them that would turn them off.
Yeah,
correct.
That kind of stuff. It's while there may be some validities to some things, those could be red flags.
Shutdowns,
yeah, and that shut
if
them
you
down.
just got done reading an honest biography in Joseph Smith, don't go there.
right.
It's like, let's just walk away.
I mean, shoot, just think about yourselves when you're in a conversation and you're in a discussion or disagreement. Like when someone goes on the attack, like that, like you don't want to talk to them. You're just, I'm done.
Yeah, you're checked out.
Yeah, it's like it's no longer profitable. You're here to win. You're not here to actually discuss.
Exactly.
I think the greatest virtue, the greatest Christian virtue, can help us in this, and that's love. Like, it's the greatest.
Yeah. What did Paul say? Let your conversation be seasoned with salt.
Yeah. And I think being loving is really important. Like, they're an image bearer of God. They need Jesus.
Yeah. I mean,
They're an image bearer of God.
Yeah.
in marriages, they always go to the 1 Corinthians text of love
1
is patient.
Corinthians 13, yeah.
Yeah, love is patient, love is kind. That also applies when
Yeah.
you're trying to, be loving towards your Mormon missionaries that have come to your door.
Right.
You want to be patient and kind with them.
Fruits of the Spirit, and go there.
Another way of opening them up to conversation and talking is feeding them.
Yes. Food. Like, make
And
sure
hot chocolate.
know their dietary restrictions.
Right.
These days. Do you like peanuts? Are we doing milk? Bread? Where we at here?
Yep.
We know you can't do coffee.
But I
Can't
mean,
serve
we're
wine.
talking about
Can't serve wine, yeah.
more missionaries that are 18,
Yeah.
under 20.
Yeah. The very young.
Not
bucks.
not with not with a lot. They don't have a lot of money necessarily.
Yeah.
So
They're riding bikes for a reason.
I mean, some have cars now these
Yeah,
days,
okay.
but yeah, I mean, if
Well, the ones in bikes are going to be fitter.
Yeah, that's true. It's like, you guys are burning a lot of calories. How can I get this? All right, that's good. Hopefully you can approach Mormons in a way that is thoughtful, loving, not intimidating.
One last piece of advice, though.
I was about to land the plane, man.
You can't land the plane without saying
You
one more thing.
You interrupted me.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm hijacking this plane.
Too soon?
Not gonna, all right, no jokes there. Bad taste. Be grounded in the scriptures yourself.
Yeah.
yeah,
You need to know what you believe.
Yeah.
There's going to be questions that they have that you're not going to know the answer to, and that's okay. But that doesn't mean you don't want to be prepared and know your own stuff as well.
Yeah, that's good.
and you know what? The good thing about that is, if you don't know the answers,
Mm-hmm.
you can say, "Hey, you know what? Let me write this question down. I'll get back to you on this."
Yeah.
And that leads to more conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and it keeps the door open
Totally.
to keep that conversation going.
Here's the challenge you're going to run into with Mormon missionaries is that they move them a lot. So if you build that relationship, just don't expect it to last, because at least in a face-to-face way, you connect with people online. But they serve 2-year stints, and they usually go from one location to the next within those 2 years. When I have in mind here are like neighbors, coworkers, people, your kids play in the same basketball league or whatever,
Right.
Developing those relationships is really important. And frankly, you are a missionary Christian. Wherever you live, you have spheres of influence that you're a part of, circles that you're a part of, and God has called you to share the gospel with them. And that's really important. One final statement, and it's just coming to mind. I wish, it's almost like we're not going to do another podcast, guys. Don't worry. But if we were to do one on Mormonism, it would be this. I would love to talk about how the church in general should be sending more missionaries to Utah, to the state of Utah.
And there's a pageant, I think, in the spring and the fall. And there are a lot of Christians that go to Utah and Arizona, where they
Yep.
have all those temples.
Right.
And they stand out on the streets and the sidewalks, witnessing, handing out pamphlets, trying to have conversations with Mormons as they're going to the pageant.
Yeah.
And so there is that, because they know there's going to be a huge gathering.
Yeah, totally.
During that time frame.
But like, if God has put it in your heart to plant a church, I'd pray about the state of Utah. And I'm dead serious when I say that. I mean, we can go to the Northeast, and we know how it's become, very secular and non-Christian or whatever. We can go to the Northwest, state of Washington and Oregon. I get it. I get all that.
Yeah.
But man, the stronghold Mormonism, a false religion, not Christianity,
Right.
cult, has on that area is crazy.
I mean, I want to put this out there, and it should be convicting for a lot of us that don't really do much evangelizing, and I'm not talking about like street preaching.
Yeah.
I'm talking about being there and reaching out to your sphere of influence. They do so much work for a lie.
Yeah,
They do so much work for what we know is a lie.
man.
Yep.
And
No,
we
yeah.
don't do much for the truth.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm getting off on a tangent here, so you have to reel me back in pretty soon. But there's another religion out there that is just very similar, and it's Jehovah's Witnesses.
JWs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, they have
That's
a
gonna be a
very
different
strong
podcast, man. We're gonna have to
Yeah.
talk about them too,
Yeah.
because they're, different beliefs, right?
Yeah.
I find that Mormons are more present, I guess. I mean, I'm not saying Jehovah's Witnesses are, but I've seen more Mormons. I've interacted with them more.
They're more willing to
engage.
Yep.
Yeah.
Whereas the Jehovah's Witnesses
And
are.
one thing I've learned from James White, it's like with Mormons, you need to know a little bit about a lot, versus like with Jehovah's Witnesses, you need to really be able to like go deep into it
Yeah.
with knowledge, less content, but you have to know it way better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they'll bring you to John 1:1.
Oh, yeah,
they'll argue the Greek.
They will.
And
They
you
will.
need to know.
And so the good thing with John 1:1 is you keep reading to John 1:3, and then you start asking them questions about that, and we can get into that in the next podcast.
Yeah. You got it. All right, guys. I'm landing this plane. Thank you, Rob Danielson. Thank you, Logan Kane. You're familiar with Logan's voice. Rob is a member at Redemption Church. Thankful for him. He and his wife and his family have been a part of our church since the beginning. Really grateful for that. And we've spent a lot of time together
Yeah.
talking about so many things, about living life together, being godly husbands and good parents, just trying to follow the Lord by God's grace, but also just with a desire and passion to know God's word and then to see his word go forth and to share the gospel with people. So I appreciate that passion in you. Logan, as always, it's been good. It's been fun.
But it ain't been real good fun.
Yeah.
That's what Brooks
As
said.
it Brooks says, yeah. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. If you could, like us on YouTube. You can do the 5 stars in Apple Podcasts and all those things. I can't keep track of
And
all
for
the
you
things.
Amazon listeners, we appreciate you.
There's still Amazon listeners. All right, everyone. God bless. Peace out. This is Cornfield Theology.
You're listening to an audio resource from Redemption Hill Church. This resource is not meant to be a replacement for participation at a local church, but an accessory to the care you're receiving from your own pastors. To learn more about Redemption Hill Church or to give to our ministry, visit redemptionhilldsm.org.